Today on the Big 6 and 60, Iowa gets an upset over number 9 Nebraska.
Iowa in a physical, rugged game gets the victory 57-52.
Purdue falls at home to Michigan in a top 10 matchup.
Purdue had a shot to go in and win that game.
And NC State dominates against ranked North Carolina.
The largest margin of victory over the Heels since 1962.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Iowa Hawkeyes hosted number 9 Nebraska last night and got the upset win that marks the biggest plus on Iowa's resume so far this season. Trent Condon with Locked On Hawkeyes recaps that win.
Iowa in a physical, rugged game gets the victory 57-52 over the Huskers. This was a game that we talked about leading in, the importance of this one, just how important it was for Iowa to get a victory. After the 2-game losing streak, the inexplicable loss that they had against Maryland, losing to a team in that fashion after you're coming in with the 6-game winning streak, and then what happened Saturday against Purdue, you finally have a full building, you finally have the crowd energized and ready to go, and you never deliver. There were so few moments in that game. Iowa was just dominated in all aspects against the Boilermakers. And though this is not going to be a game that is talked about because of a bunch of great plays on the offensive end, some big-time shots, though there were a few of those, this is just the kind of win that Iowa needed when you're not playing well. The biggest component, though, to this one, no doubt about it, was what we saw on the defensive end of the floor. And after this defense had been struggling in a big-time way, and we've gone through the numbers here on Locked On Hawkeyes here over the last couple of weeks, just the step back that this team has taken on that end of the floor and what we've seen out of them defensively. Coming in the month of February before tonight, Iowa was 242nd in the country in defensive efficiency after being 33rd in November, 14th in December, 18th in January, and then this monster step back that we saw recently. In a way, you look at that 6-game winning streak, and yes, you can only beat the teams that are on your schedule at the time. It wasn't a bunch of high-level victories, though they did get 2 quad 1 wins with the road win against Indiana, certainly the best of the bunch, along with that comeback victory against Washington late at night a couple of weeks back. Still, you look through there, this team was taking a step back defensively, and you have still concerns with this squad, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but just finding a way and doing it with the defense. This is a Nebraska team that's incredibly skilled, and we can make fun of the Huskers, and we will from time to time. Obviously, a program that has never won a single game ever in the NCAA tournament. They deserve some arrows, plus they're a rival. And when you play a rival, that's okay. You can do those kind of things and have a little bit of fun with it. But to get this kind of win, to do it with the defense that we saw out of this squad, just absolutely incredible effort from this team to do it on that end of the floor and do it consistently throughout. Iowa for the game, 17 of 51 from the floor. They shoot 33% from the floor, 6 of 23 behind the arc. But the big one, 17 of 18 from the free throw line, and they needed seemingly every single one of those free throws. Dominated on the glass, 18-5 at the half, rebound edge for the Hawkeyes. They finished plus 13 in rebounds for this one, a huge component to it. And I know a lot of people will look through and they'll look at the performance of Bennett Sturtz. And Sturtz had some good looks. He also had some sloppy turnovers. And though he was credited with 4 turnovers, boy, it just felt like all of them were a little bit lazy, a little lackadaisical maybe is a better term for it up front. Those turnovers at the top of the key, getting the ball back and giving it away a couple of different times. For the game, Iowa finishes with 12 turnovers in the game, though just 3 of them in the second half. But what you have to say about Bennett Sturtz in a night where the shot wasn't falling at the same level, though that step back 3 to make it a 5-point game, boy, was that monstrous. That made it 50-45. In a night like that, you only have a couple assists from your point guard in the game. Yet, what he did, again, it goes back to the defense. And what he did defensively, chasing Price Sanford around, making it difficult on him, throughout the course of this one. Sanford finishes with 13, just 3 of 7 from the floor, knocked down 2 of 6 3-pointers. It was that defensive effort. And listening to Ben McCollum after the game, both in the radio interview with Gary Dolphin and Bobby Hansen afterwards, coupled with listening to the post-game press conference, you could definitely tell that Ben McCollum, there was that want. And that's what he wants from Bennett Sturts. As he talked about, there are times that they yell at each other. There's times that they disagree with the way that things are going. And it's still, in the end, he makes the big plays and did it with his defense. Speaking of defense, another guy, the only other guy in double figures in the game was Cooper Koch. Cooper Koch a multitude of different times. He was out there and he got switched up, and there were different times that he was guarding little Sammy Hoiberg. He got caught on a couple of switches, yet he held his own a couple of times inside, going up against Rink Mast. And, they ask a lot out of Cooper Koch on the defensive end. Still, that shooting, the 3-pointers that he hit, one at the beginning of both halves, ignited him, but there's other looks that he still needs to knock down and be more consistent. What you love about Cooper Koch, though, and what you need to see, I think, even more, don't be scared to make that big shot. Don't be scared to take that big shot. And that goes back to a couple of weeks ago when we talked about that. Is Cooper Koch offensively is probably the most skilled guy on this team, short of Bennett Sturts. Sturts obviously is on his own level and the own plateau that he has out there. But when you're talking about a complete skill set, he can put it on the deck a little bit. He can play with his back to his basket, and we know what a good shooter he can be. Cooper Koch has the full complement. They got to get more out of that. Tavion Banks finishes 1 of 5 from the floor. 6 points in the game, made all his free throws because that's what Tavion Banks does. 6 points in the game. The 10 rebounds, though, don't even come close to telling the story. You talk about a guy that left it all on the floor. That was Tavion Banks. On both ends of the floor, he was battling. He was absolutely incredible for the Hawkeyes when they needed every single guy to do something. Speaking of that, we also have to talk about Cam and what he was able to do. Maniau, he was able to go out in a game where he scored 2 points, made both of his free throws, had 4 rebounds, and you say, yeah, so? This guy, what he was doing, battling, getting Iowa a couple of extra possessions late in that basketball game with the hustle plays that he made, he absolutely deserves a star by his name. Fulgaris pretty good off the bench, hit that big 3-pointer on the behind-the-back pass from Bennett Sturts. Liked what we saw. Very active from Alvaro Fulgaris. That's another component that you're going to need. And when you look at the plus-minus number, and I know some people in basketball circles, they don't like the plus-minus. It doesn't tell the whole story of guys. How about this, though? The leader in this basketball game, plus-minus, was Isaiah Howard. He was just 1 of 5 from the floor. Hit a top of the 3 key. That was it. Offensively out of him, and in fact, missed the only free throw miss that Iowa had in a 1-and-1 late in that basketball game. They were plus 15, though, when he was on the floor. I thought Tate Sage did some good things as well. Had a 3-pointer rattle out. Another guy that's not scared of the moment. And as we continue to see Cale Combs just struggling mightily, absolutely struggling in the game in all realms. Defensively, still a good defender, but not the elite defender that we saw, different components earlier this season out of him. And he's just lost on the offensive end. How many times that he's dribbled into the corner, dribbled into double teams, gets into the paint and doesn't do anything. That is something that needs to change. And if it doesn't, Cale Combs' minutes need to go down, and we need to see more Isaiah Howard. We need to see more Tate Sage, because at this point, he just looks so lost on the floor. That's a big negative out of this squad. They go 8 deep in this one. No, the numbers not pretty.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking into the events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angles on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. Purdue hosted number 1 Michigan last night in a battle of top 10 teams, but the Boilermakers couldn't defend Mackey Arena and fell to the Wolverines. Nick Arvin recaps the game on Locked On Boilermakers.
The environment was great. Purdue, Mackey, rocking last night. In Michigan, they had the opportunity to come in and lay an egg. Purdue had a shot to go in and win that game, get themselves within a game of the Big Ten title. Unfortunately, the Wolverines come in last night and they were focused. They were motivated. They wanted to win that game more than Purdue did, in my opinion. I think both teams wanted it, but Michigan was more physical. They outshot Purdue. There's a lot to talk about in terms of this game. And Raphael Davis, he'll be coming on the show tomorrow to talk a little bit more about this one. But I just want to give you guys my rapid reactions as this one ends out. It was tough. It really was tough. Where early on, defense was the key to this game. Purdue keeps it really close to start out. Not a very high-scoring game, but ultimately Michigan just is able to break through. They shoot the three ball really well in this game, over 50%, and that was the difference. But coming out of this one, when a Michigan team, they get up by as much as 20 in the first half. I liked what I saw in terms of the fight in the second half at times for Purdue, but this Boilermakers team doesn't have the pace. They're not fast enough to get back into games like that. They can't come back because we're not fast. We're not as physical as Michigan was. It was a hill to climb that was just unclimbable in the second half for Purdue. And there's a lot that you have to look at in terms of the Boilermakers. Why do you get yourself in that position? Because I don't think it's just all a credit to Michigan shooting the three ball better. That's kind of a cope, in my opinion. You can't just say that they shot the ball better. Michigan did a lot of things better than Purdue in this game. They were definitely the more physical team. The front court made it really difficult for Purdue. Trey Kaufman-Renn had a good game, but ultimately, those points just didn't matter. Morrow was incredibly impressive for me. I have seen him over the course of this season, but I just haven't examined him for 40 straight minutes like I did in this one. He changes games. Incredible player. Merez Johnson Jr. did some good things. Of course, Lindeberg, he wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you could tell that he came in and he didn't let the environment at Mackey Arena get to him, had 13 points, wasn't the most efficient, didn't rebound the ball at a high level, but he did enough for Michigan to win this game. And ultimately, that's the story coming out of here, is that the Wolverines did enough to come out with a victory against Purdue. Nobody in this game really did anything extraordinary. Nobody had a 20-point performance. It wasn't like the Illinois game where Keaton Wagler goes for 46 points. Michigan was just better over the course of 40 minutes. They had 6 different guys in double figures here. Trey McKinney had 13 points. Kaysen had 13. Cadeau, who was great in this game, matched up well against Braden Smith, had 17. Mara had 10, but 11 rebounds to go with them. Johnson had 12 and 11, and then Yaxel had 13 points. I'm not trying to sit here and say that I don't believe in Purdue just because they lose this game. And it's not even a game that I'm necessarily upset with. It's disappointing because I thought Purdue had a real shot to go in and win this game. But I'm more so come out of this just thinking, how good is Michigan? Where can they go? I was really impressed with the Wolverines. I didn't think that Purdue necessarily did anything bad in this game. They could have crashed the boards a little harder. They could have shot the three ball at a better rate. But I just really don't think there is a magic formula for beating this Michigan team, and certainly not one that Purdue had last night. There were times where we had momentum, and to my point about the pace, Braden Smith had a steal in transition, hit out Fletcher Lawyer. I think it was to cut it to single figures in the second half. And then airball, it's just stuff like that where you have opportunities but can't convert. It's just stuff like that where you have opportunities but you can't convert when you need it to happen. For some of you guys out there, you may or may not know if you've watched the show, but I'm a huge Pacers fan as well, outside of being a Purdue fan. And if you look back to these NBA playoffs, the reason why they were able to have so much success coming back in games like the one against the Knicks or the Cavs, the Bucks, all of those games where they come back in, you look at the pace. They had the number one offense in terms of being efficient, going with pace. Tyrese Halliburton, he's fast. That's why they were able to come back in games. And you have Braden Smith, who is a great point guard, but when he has 0 points in the first half and you're not a fast team, you're not going to be able to come back, especially not when you're able to, especially not when you don't execute in big moments like Purdue was unable to do. I was happy with the fight, but just fight isn't enough to get back in games like this. With that being said, bottom line is it's a loss. It's not the end of the world. The Big Ten title is out of the equation, but this doesn't change the ceiling for me, in my opinion. We just know that Purdue is in a different tier than Michigan. I think Michigan is in a tier of their own, followed by Nebraska, Michigan State, Purdue, Illinois. I just think that Michigan is a different kind of team this year. Purdue is still going to be that 2 seed, still going to be that 3 seed that, if things align, can make a run potentially to the Final Four, potentially even compete for a Big Ten championship in the tournament. I don't think any of that changes. I think that what we get out of this game is that Michigan should be the number 1 overall seed in March Madness, and that this Michigan defense, this Michigan front court, they're really freaking good. A team that we haven't really seen, or at least an identity like this. We've seen great teams in the Big Ten, but I don't know if we've seen any built like this Michigan team, where you have a great front court, where you have a head coach in Dusty May that can throw absolutely anything at you. Braden Smith had 0 points in the first half, but a lot of that was because they were forcing the ball out of his hands, putting length, putting these bigs on Braden, forcing him to pass it to his teammates. He wasn't able to get any looks. And for Michigan, if you're able to do that to the best point guard in the nation, you can definitely game plan against anybody else that you're going to be able to play. That's why they've had so much success this year. It's because of that brilliant defense. And after this game, I'm not as much disappointed in Purdue or upset with the way that Purdue played. I'm more just, I want to give Michigan their flowers because they played a great game. They came into Mackey Arena with a good game plan, and they came out with a victory. This is a statement victory for the Wolverines, one that they're going to be able to hold up in March Madness and say, we are deserving of that number 1 overall seed because we beat Purdue. Once again, bottom line, this isn't the end of the road for Purdue. This isn't the end of the world. I still think that we have a good basketball team and a team that is going to be capable of going places, but you have to take a real look at that physicality and be realistic. We don't match up physicality-wise, speed-wise, front court-wise with a team like Michigan. There are other 1 seeds I think Purdue could beat. There are definitely 2 seeds that I think that Purdue could beat. Michigan was just a really tough matchup, and we found that out last night with a 91-80 loss at home, Mackey Arena. Still some huge games coming up. Indiana on Friday, then you got Michigan State the following week.
NC State dominated last night against number 16 North Carolina, beating the in-state rivals by 34 when it was all said and done. Locked On Wolfpack hosts Grayson Boone and Kenton Gibbs have more after the win.
82-58 over the Dirty Foot Club, the largest margin of victory over the Heels since 1962, a 24-point win in the Lenovo Center. We're fired up here. It's a game that we had to have, and we flat out dominated. And I know the immediate storyline is to say, they didn't have Caleb Wilson. Oh, Henry Vasar didn't play. We don't give a damn. What was NC State supposed to do? Postpone this game until they're healthy? That's not how the world works. So maybe you could put that back on, well, maybe Hubert Davis didn't construct the rest of the roster to be conducive to success outside of their front court, because their back court today, we had the clamps on them. NC State played a fantastic game. Really, they might have been better on defense than they were on offense, and that's saying something. But a 24-point win over the Dirty Foot Club. Kenton, this one feels good.
I don't feel bad for this team at all. I never will. Couldn't happen to a better team. But 1 of 9 on the night, 0 of 3 from deep, 2 of 4 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 personal fouls, 1 turnover, 4 points. I think Seth Trimble is in the locker room listening to Akon right now. You know why? Because he's locked up. They won't let him out. They won't let him out. He locked up. You know, this is a very, very tough time for the Dirty Foot Club. And I get it. Coping and seething is easy to do in a moment like this. It's easy to do. And so I'm going to let those bozos talk to themselves for a minute, and I'm going to talk to Wolfpack Nation. Don't it feel damn good to have Will Wade as your coach?
Sure
This
does.
is what me and Grayson were talking about in terms of some results are not, everything's not going to be perfect. The collapse last game was absolutely horrendous. But guess what? How many times do we have to hear, this is the first time since 74. This is the first time since 62. This is the first time in 3,000 games. How many times do we have to hear that before you start believing Will Wade is the goods as a coach?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know about y'all, but anytime I hear that many firsts coming out of a team, somebody's got to be doing something damn right around there. This is a great game. This is a wonderful game. John Rothstein said that Matt Abel is an emerging X factor for NC State. And I said, baby, welcome to the party. You're a few months late, but we're happy to have you. We're happy to have you on the Matt Abel hype train. And you know what? The boys of Locked On Wolfpack might put a little something in the coffers to keep him here in Raleigh next year. Because I'm going to tell you something. He was born for a moment like this. He was born for it. And Darian Williams, Unc must have called him soft again. Unc must have called him soft. He must have got that call.
He must have went a little further than just soft, because my man had incredible toughness tonight.
Let me tell you something. Against bigger players, no problem. Let me take you down into the waters. Let me take you to the deep end and baptize you real quick. You know, and then on the perimeter, there was a sequence that I tweeted about during the game where D. Will is locking up their guards. Matt Abel gets a steal. We go down and miss a three. Matt Abel gets the offensive rebound and puts it back. What this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. You can feel nothing but jubilation. And most importantly, I'm going to toss it back to you, Grayson, but most importantly, I remember a certain coach before he got here. I can almost remember it. My eyes are closed because I'm visualizing it right now. I remember a certain coach saying, you're going to be able to walk around with that block S on your chest at work like, yeah, we're with the Wolfpack.
Yep.
Yeah, that's who we are. I might just go for a run in my Letterman tomorrow. You understand? Get a couple miles in on that thing because I want the whole world to know the Wolfpack is back, baby. Again, Will Wade is the goods. This team is the goods. Is everything perfect all the time? No, but this is a damn good team. And every win and every loss does not need to be a referendum of what this team is or what they ain't. Because again, horrific loss against Louisville. Yes, horrible to blow it against Miami. But we're talking about the biggest blowout of the Heels since 1962. If you stack me and Grayson's ages on top of each other, that human still would not be old enough to see this.
You want to talk about showing up to the party. Matt Abel, just a freshman kid. And, there were some high expectations placed on Matt Abel coming into the season. 5-star freshman, the first high school recruit of the Will Wade era. And we're still trying to figure out, what's his role really going to be for this team? Can he be a microwave scorer? Might he start at some points of the year? What's the real impact that a kid like that's going to make? Tonight was the biggest impact he had made in any single game of the entire season. And what a night to do that, might I add. A career high for Matt Abel, 19 points. He was 5 of 7 from downtown. And every single one of those threes that he hit, it had to feel like a shotgun blast to the chest for those in light blue over there. Because it was like the timing of when he buried those, including the one at the very end of the game, off balance, fading away, just for show, really. Didn't even need that shot. But he just gave him one more for the road to send him on out of there. What a performance from the freshman. And, again, watching him progress as the season has gone on, he's made some freshman mistakes, as, freshmen do. But he's gotten incrementally better, incrementally smarter. The game's starting to slow down a little bit for him. And, there's times you're still going to have some of those growth moments, like, some of those like we saw on Saturday against Miami. But to respond like this, on a stage like this, you're on ESPN, you're playing your arch rival, and you play your best game of the season, especially when you have Darian Williams that's out for a bit. I want to talk more about Darian Williams here in just a second, but this was an unbelievable performance from Matt Abel. He deserves all the credit in the world. this performance, it might have some life to it amongst the Wolfpack faithful, because it's not often that we forget guys that put on for us, like I said, on a stage like this. So shout out to Matt Abel, phenomenal night, 19 points. He had 6 rebounds as well. Humongous performance. He was mixing up with the big boys as well, trying to get some rebounds for us. So his toughness and his intensity and the energy, we've said this really all year, the energy that he gives you is not really something you find in many players, and you can feel a tangible difference when he's on the floor. Felt it for the entirety of his time on the floor tonight. Now, Darian Williams, and his toughness has been questioned. His intensity has been questioned. His effort has been questioned. And, tonight doesn't mask the entire season, but I'd be damned if I tell you he didn't earn a lot of respect from me tonight. To land like literally on your face, flat on his face. Didn't break the fall with an elbow or a shoulder. He broke the fall with his face and busted open his eyebrow. Blood everywhere. It was a scary sight. But I had a slight feeling, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be the end of Darian Williams in this game, because he had gotten off to what looked like the best start of the season so far. He had like 7 points immediately right out of the gate. And to lose some of that momentum, him coming off of the floor, it's like, man, I hope we don't lose focus from everybody else here. Right. To watch him come back out of the tunnel, stitched up, fresh jersey on, had the blood off of it, no nameplate on the back. I don't think there was anything that was going to keep D1 out of this game tonight. And even though he still had limited minutes, I think it was only 17 minutes in totality, he gave you 13 points. And he showed you that he was not going to quit regardless. And I think a lot of people kind of get caught up in the comments that Wade makes after the game saying, oh, we're a soft team. We got a bunch of nice guys. We don't have guys that are going to fight and claw for all of this. There's something to be said for maybe he takes it too far in that. Like, why aren't you telling them that? Why are you telling the media that? First of all, he is telling that to the team. But second of all, I saw that as a challenge. He's challenging his team publicly, saying, hey, I've been trying all season to get through to you guys. What is it going to take for y'all to buy in and get tough and have more want to than you've shown all year? And what Darian Williams showed you today, he's been the most criticized player, not even close, on this team for the entirety of the season. For him to put it all on the line for NC State, he deserves a ton of respect for what he gave us tonight. 13 points, 6 of 10 shooting.
Darian Williams, his energy spread to this team tonight. And I mean that. I feel like it's safe to say Quadir Copeland is the emotional leader of this team. But when Darian Williams is bringing the passion that he brought to tonight's game, we were up 20 points, second half. Sanye is on the ground diving for a loose ball.
Yeah.
That's what you get when Quadir Copeland is going to bring it every night. But when your best players, when your star is bringing it, and that's not to say Quadir hasn't been our best player, but when you've got Darian bringing it as well, it's like, when you were in school and they used to light all the matches next to each other, like you would light one match and then just watch it go on down the road in science class. It's like that because we saw it tonight. We saw 7 points out the gate. And then after that fall, stitch me up, I'm going back. Stitch me up, I'm going back. I'm not worried about nothing else right now. I'm worried about getting them dirty feet up out my crib. That's what I'm worried about right now. I ain't worried about nothing else. We'll worry about tomorrow when tomorrow gets here. I need to be back in this game. Throw me the 34 jersey. I don't care about my name being on the back of my jersey. Put me on the court. When that happens, when that attitude is there, and here's the other thing, Grayson. We talk so much about on the boards, just keep it close. We know the size deficiencies that we have compared to other teams. We know the things that we lack compared to other teams. And this one, you lose the rebounding battle by 3. That's what we know. We know playing in the ACC with what we have in our front court, you're naturally going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage there. They battled and they fought, and this was a game where there was from start to finish, there was never a foot taken off the neck. There was never a moment where it was like, oh man, we got them down. We're good now. This is the type of stuff, and again, it was spearheaded. Even though the minutes weren't there, even though the points weren't there because of the injury, it was spearheaded by D. Will showing up to this game and showing from the moment the game started. He didn't wait till we got down to lean up. No, he started the game right here at the TV screen. I mean, I'm locked in. I'm strapped in. I'm strapped in. I love to see that.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking into the events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angles on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back into the Big 6 in 60. The Green Bay Packers will need to find a new special teams coordinator after Rich Bisaccia stepped down from the position Tuesday. To tell us more on the move and who could get the job next, here's Peter Bukowski with Locked On Packers.
Rich Bisaccia has stepped down as the special teams coach for the Green Bay Packers. We are going to cover this from every angle. The timing, the effort, what comes next, all of it. And the thing that I have heard, and something my pal Brandon Snide said on the Squad Show, but I've heard this elsewhere, is this is not going to change. We had Justice Mosqueda on the show a couple months ago. This has been his hobby horse. Nothing is going to change until the Packers change institutionally, until they change from the top down. I don't buy this at all. I would like for you to point to the teams in the NFL who quote unquote care more about special teams than the Packers. Rich Bisaccia was the highest paid special teams coach in the NFL. They brought him in to fix the special teams. They have allocated resources from free agent signings, Dallin Leavitt, Keyshawn Nixon. And by the way, the best thing the special teams have done in the Rich Bisaccia era was fall ass backwards into Keyshawn Nixon, the all-pro returner. They didn't even know he could do that when they signed him. It was an accident. We don't have to go chapter and verse through the mistakes that have been made for the Green Bay Packers. But I can tell you, effort, at least the last few years, has not been the culprit. They used a draft pick on Anders Carlson. They were wrong about that. They drafted Tariq Carpenter essentially exclusively to be a special teams player. Someone like Bo Melton is on the team to be a special teams player. Why he can't return punts, I don't know. I don't know why that was never really tried. I don't know why that was never really discussed. I don't know why he's not returning kicks. He is tailor-made to be a special teams maven for you. What the hell? And I know that there are core special teams players around the league. And the thing is, you can name on one hand those guys. The guys that are the Matthew Slaters of the world. Those guys are few and far between. Yes, it took the Packers some time to decide, hey, let's play some starters on special teams. That's the coach's job. That's Rich Bisaccia's job. We don't know what the allocation of resources is from the top down. And I know that it is Justice's point of view that the reason that the Packers didn't have more starters on special teams is because Matt LaFleur didn't allow it. I don't know that to be true. I have no reason to believe that to be true. I do know that not playing your starters is a reason that you had a kick block that cost you a game in Cleveland. The next week, they have another kick blocked that turns into a 2-point return that costs you a game in Dallas. And guess what? As soon as that happens, you're all of a sudden, guys like Elton Jenkins are out on the field goal team. But I look at this special teams group. I don't see a team that has any idea what it's doing. What is the plan? What is the kickoff plan? Can you tell me? When do they want to kick it deep? When do they want to kick it in the landing area? When do they want to kick a touchback? What is there a plan? Do they know the rules? Genuinely, do they know the new kickoff rules? Does it affect the way that they make decisions on when to kick it and when not to kick it? Do they make decisions based on time, score, field position? It sure doesn't seem like it. That is a coaching problem. And I know that for a lot of you, I don't need to make the case that Rich Bisaccia needed to go. And by the way, I do think ultimately that is what happened. I don't think the Packers wanted him back. I think that this was part of a negotiated, you can step down, we'll wait till the smoke clears, we'll give you your moment, we'll make this not seem like a firing. Now that creates all sorts of other issues for the Packers that we'll talk about. That is a reflection of Matt LaFleur. And if you're Rich Bisaccia, let's just say this is not a firing or a de facto firing. Let's just say. Well, then it is one more way in which Rich Bisaccia has screwed the special teams for the Green Bay Packers, because the hiring processes are finished everywhere else. In fact, one of the Packers special teams assistants already got hired in Cleveland. So even if they wanted to promote internally, the next in line isn't there. Now, they've already done that with Maurice Drayton after they moved on from Sean Menenga. That didn't work either. So I don't know why you would have faith that the Packers would get this right. They've gotten it wrong over and over. And the efforts that they've made, personnel-wise, to get this right, have also failed. But I don't know how much of that is on Brian Gutekunst and how much of that is on the coach. Oren Burks, for example, he was a core special teamer for the Packers. They let him walk. He went on to be a core special teamer on other teams. Could they have, paid to keep a backup linebacker and a core special teamer? Yeah, sure they could have. They believe, and I think rightly, by the way, you draft someone like Tyron Hopper, he needs to be an impact special teamer for you. You draft Evan Williams. Now, I know he ended up having to play for them. He's got to be a core special teamer for you right away. I think very clearly, to me, this was a coaching problem. And if it is the case that Matt LaFleur was holding back Rich Bisaccia from playing his best players on special teams, especially on things like field goal protect, that is a problem with your head coach. But if you're the assistant head coach, which Rich Bisaccia was, then isn't the whole point of having Rich Bisaccia be the assistant head coach that he can go to the actual head coach and say, dude, we need the guys. We need the bodies. Right? That's why you do that. So I can't even put this on Matt LaFleur, because the whole point of creating the structure that you did is so that you have every resource imaginable. They gave Rich Bisaccia every resource imaginable. Now, it is the case that the cornerbacks that the Packers want to draft and the receivers that the Packers want to draft do not fit the mold for the normal returner types. That's true. They're not going to draft Allen Rossum. They're not going to draft Desmond Howard. But the most successful returner that they've had over the last 10 years was Micah Hyde, who's 6 foot, 200 pounds. Don't tell me you don't have anyone that can do this. Now, they drafted Jaden Reed. He was given that opportunity. It didn't go great. Some muffed punts, some bad decisions, but that's also coaching. Why are guys taking the ball out of the end zone when they shouldn't? Why are they catching it inside the 5-yard line when they shouldn't? Why are they fair catching with 20 yards in front of them when they shouldn't? That is coaching. Do they even practice? It felt like they don't even practice. I can't blame Rich Bisaccia for Brandon McManus missing field goals. I can blame Rich Bisaccia for Anders Carlson. But I can also blame Rich Bisaccia for handling the kicker position the way that he did. He was the assistant head coach. If you think Brandon McManus is playing hurt, you go to the head coach and you say, hey, I think we need to shut him down. He's clearly not healthy. After miss kick after miss kick. You just can't abide this. And the Packers, they paid for it. They paid for it in a big way this season. And special teams once again cost them. Let's not forget the punt returns. The return game, again, we hear, oh, well, the punt coverage and the kick coverage has actually improved. That's true. Except in the playoffs, when you had 2 punt returns that set up points for the Bears in the second half when the offense could not do anything. They were able to create some momentum to tighten up the game because of returns. By the way, Devin Duvernay, also the kind of receiver that the Packers would draft. Pretty good returner. Don't tell me you can't find good returners because of the body type that the Packers draft. It's excuses. It's nonsense. This needed to happen. The problem is the timing has really shrunk the talent pool. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking into the events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angles on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. The Seattle Seahawks didn't take too long to find an offensive coordinator, settling on Brian Fleury from the 49ers for the gig. Locked On Seahawks looks into what Fleury will bring over from the division rivals.
As I predicted last week, it didn't take very long for Mike Macdonald to name a new offensive coordinator. With that being said, it played out a little differently than I anticipated in terms of the final result. Brian Fleury, the former tight end and run game coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, coming over as the replacement for Clint Kubiak. And from my understanding, Rob, this was literally a couple hours after he spoke with Mike Macdonald and Team Brass that they made this decision. That is how impressive that he was in his interview. And this came after interviewing 4 in-house candidates: Mac Brown, the tight end coach; Andrew Janocko, former quarterback coach, now the OC for the Raiders; Justin Outen, who's still on the staff; and Jake Peets, who is still currently on the staff. All 4 of those guys met with Mike Macdonald about a promotion, and Macdonald decided to pivot and go with Brian Fleury, who is a fascinating candidate. And I think you can go back to Locked On Seahawks this time last year when we were talking about the Clint Kubiak hiring. Right before that decision, Brian Fleury was a name that I threw out there last year that intrigued me off that 49ers staff. And I know a lot of fans are concerned because he's never been a play caller. I understand that at any level. He's never called plays, at least on the offensive side of the football. But there is precedent for coaches that haven't called plays to be such a natural fit and have done so many other things in the league that they are built for this opportunity, and have to believe that's what Mike Macdonald is thinking here with Brian Fleury, who has done a lot as a 47-year-old coach. He's still a young coach, has done a lot in the National Football League.
He's done a lot of coaching, Corbin, of various different positions, various different perspectives. I think it ties in beautifully with what Mike Macdonald has always prioritized about, the complementary football. I think that when you look at the different track record, the varied track record that is Fleury here. I mean, he was a defensive coordinator at Sacred Heart, a small college, a special teams coordinator at Towson, another small college, and then jumped into the NFL, serving time as defensive quality coach, Buffalo Bills, assistant linebacker coach with the Cleveland Browns, football research analysis and director of football research with the Miami Dolphins, and then had 4 different jobs. The most recent, which of course, as you mentioned, the run game coordinator, and previously serving as the tight ends coach, as well as defensive quality and offensive quality coaches with the 49ers. Corbin, I say all of that because, again, I think that it is the perspective that Brian Fleury was able to learn throughout his different positions that I think really ties in very well. When we discussed the 49ers on 3 different occasions, of course, as a Seattle opponent, one of the just the consistent natures of our conversations, was going to deal with the running game and the tight ends. And of course, that's where Flory excelled. His own tight end, George Kittle, who of course was a superstar long before Flory was coaching him, but at the same time, Kittle himself talked about what impact that Flory brought to the table, just the analytical nature of understanding from a linebacker and defensive perspective what they might be trying to do to slow down the tight end, slow down the running game. We talked about how the 49ers didn't have a great deal of wide receiver speed or playmaking ability, and yet they were still as effective as they were with everybody focusing in on their tight end and running game. To me, that is one of the most intriguing things about this, Corbin. The Seahawks, while they didn't go with one of their in-house candidates, and so you can make an argument that there wasn't the continuity that many people were anticipating, I would kind of push back on that idea a little bit. I think that this is a step towards the continuity that Mike McDonald kind of talked about. This is still a run-heavy team. Or a run-heavy offense, that I'm certainly expecting that Flory is going to be bringing here. You're stealing from one of your divisional opponents and one of the more brilliant play callers in all of the NFL. Flory was used more and provide Kyle Shanahan more perspective throughout the game planning this year in particular. So I think that you're talking about a coach who is on the rise. The Seahawks recognize that. And oh, by the way, Mike McDonald, of course, as we all know, was the very first head coach to ever win a Super Bowl who was making the play calls himself. So making bold decisions is nothing new for Mike McDonald or for John Schneider. I think this is going to wind up being a terrific hire for the Seahawks, and one that, again, is going to take away from one of your greatest opponents. It's like a tip of the cap to the 49ers, but also one way to keep the target moving for the 31 other teams out there who thought that they knew what the Seahawks were going to do. Instead, Mike McDonald just pivoted once again.
At the same time, they're not outsmarting themselves. I know there's some people that I've seen that have made that's been their analysis of this, and I see the exact opposite. I see Mike McDonald doing what he does. He is chasing edges with this hire. And we know the affinity that he has for coaches that have coached on both sides or all three sides of the football. And Brian Fleury has done all three in the National Football League to an extent. He has coached special teams. He has coached offense. He has coached defense. He has been indoctrinated to Kyle Shanahan's offense for the last 6 years. And he's had a number of roles there. And I think tight end coaches, Ben Johnson was a tight end coach before he became an OC. And oh, by the way, he had never called plays before the Detroit Lions gave him the opportunity. And now look where Ben Johnson is. And I'm not saying Brian Fleury is going to be the next Ben Johnson. I'm not going to say he's not going to be either, because I think everything I've heard about this guy dating back to last year's coaching cycle is how football savvy he is and how much he understands the game at every level. And it's because of all those experiences that he has had over the years, coaching a variety of positions on both sides of the ball. That affinity to those kind of coaches, that didn't surprise me at all that Mike McDonald would have tabbed this guy as his offensive coordinator. And then you consider the fact that he coached with Clint Kubiak a couple years ago in 2023. And who was the backup quarterback on that team who has talked so much about how much that year benefited him as kind of a redshirt year of sorts? Sam Darnold. Brian Fleury knows Sam Darnold really well. He knows the offensive line coach, John Benton, really well, even though they weren't on the same side of the ball. They were on the same staff in 2019. And those two, from my understanding, know each other really well. So you mentioned the continuity aspect. You could almost argue that this offered more continuity than most of the in-house candidates they had. Jake Peetz hadn't worked with a lot of these guys until he came to Seattle. Justin Alton, when he's with Denver, he's with Kubiak, but Kubiak's gone. He doesn't have the ties to some of these other coaches. Brian Fleury has the ties to all of these guys, and he's got the ties to Sam Darnold as well. And just the fact you're going to be able to run a very similar offense that's got a lot of the same philosophies because of what he comes from in San Francisco. And it's not like he was a one-and-done guy. He was there 6 years working his way up the ladder for Shanahan. So I love it. I think it's a great hire. I know there's a lot of people out there that are questioning it because of the lack of play calling experience, but this guy's had a play sheet in his hand. He understands that. I think he is as prepared for this as anybody that hasn't been a play caller to be able to handle this. And he's getting a built-in situation that's got a lot of pressure, but I also think that he is built for it, having coached for a playoff team for a number of years in San Francisco.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that there are two elements of this hire that I really like that I think are difficult to explain, but at the same time, I think are really important. And for one of them is the fact that Seattle did decide to go outside of the organization rather than promoting one of the four assistant coaches up to the offensive coordinator spot. I think that it's going to sound silly, but I think it's very real that you have some human emotions out there. You have some egos. And if Mike Macdonald would have gone with one of the four current members of his staff and just promoted one of them, I think it would have been natural for the other three to have a little bit of jealousy. And so to your point, Corbin, I think that it would have perhaps not been quite as much continuity as maybe it would suggest. Just because they were on the staff does not mean that they have the same ideas that what Clint Kubiak has. And of course, Kubiak having cut his teeth into the Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan system, this is a follow to that style of offense. So that's one, just the coaches that were already on Seattle's roster. I think that they are going to now have to lean in, learn from somebody else. And I think that makes some sense here. I also think that, again, of all the teams in the NFL, Corbin, in my opinion, I thought that the San Francisco 49ers were coached as well or better than anybody. And I don't mean any slight, obviously, to the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks, but I just thought that the 49ers were decimated with injuries. And I was wowed with the coaching performances on all sides of the ball, special teams, offense, and defense for the 49ers. We saw Robert Saleh, obviously, now is back as a head coach. And I think that here with Brian Flores, you're seeing that same type of respect. The NFL teams recognize that the 49ers had a pretty difficult hand dealt to them with all of the injuries to some of their absolute best players. And whether it was Christian McCaffrey or Brian Robinson or George Kittle or Jake Tongas or whatever, they kept rolling. The way that they moved their guards and their fullback, their tight ends to complement the running game of Christian McCaffrey as well as the passing ability of Brock Purdy, I just thought that it was really beautifully orchestrated football. That's what I expect that Brian Flores is going to bring the Seahawks as well.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking into the events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angles on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. A lot of people say the NBA has a tanking problem, but Mark Cuban is taking the other side. He says the league should embrace the tank, and Isaac Harris has his thoughts on Locked On Mavericks.
Mark Cuban on X having some thoughts about tanking. And gosh, there's so much different things. I mean, it applies to the NBA in general for the most part, but also there's some Mavs stuff in there too. And I'm not going to read everything word for word of what Cuban put, because honestly, I copy and pasted all of it into a Word doc, and it's like 3 pages long. So I'm like, well, I can't read that. So shout out to his thumbs today, who typed out all those things, all that stuff on his phone. But there were a few takeaways that I wanted to go through, and some of it I agreed with, some of it I don't agree with. And so I kind of want to talk through, because I resonated with some of this. So one of the biggest takeaway I think from this is, hey, Mark Cuban says embrace the tank. All right. And I think that's the biggest headline with this. And his whole thing with embracing the tank is like, hey, this isn't the biggest issue. This isn't, I mean, he even says tanking isn't the issue. The issue is the fan experience. And I'll read this part of it. He says, few can remember the score from the last game they went to or they saw. They can't remember the dunks or the shots. What they remember is who they were there with, their family, friends, a date. That's what makes the experience special. He goes on. The NBA should worry more about the fan experience than tanking. It should worry more about pricing fans out of games than tanking. You know who cares least about tanking? A parent who can't afford to bring their 3 kids to a game and buy their kids a jersey of their favorite player. Tanking isn't the issue. Affordability and quality of a game presentation are. A lot of truth to this. And I want to speak on the, hey, a huge issue right now is fans getting priced out. massive. Because I was one of these people, like growing up, I've talked about this before, but I'm from a small town in Kentucky. The closest NBA team to me was the Indiana Pacers, 6 hours away. So for me to go, I went to one NBA game a year as a kid, and it was a whole thing. Like, we saved up money to go. We had to make a weekend trip out of it, get a hotel in Indianapolis, try to time it perfectly with some teams coming in, make sure the players are actually going to play, which back then it felt like they played more often. So it wasn't just a Russian roulette on that of like, oh, who's going to play right now? Is Reggie Miller playing? Is Rick Smits seen in the lineup tonight? So that's what, for me, and it was like, hey, there's so much, financial part of it. I was like saving up money for it. Well, what type of seats are we going to be able to get? And prices have skyrocketed so much in some of these arenas and marketplaces that, yeah, taking your kids to a game, and let's just say you want to get popcorn and concessions, and okay, well, this is your one game a year and your kid wants a jersey. He was like, I want a Cooper Flag jersey. I used to have a Luka one. And all of a sudden, your whole experience of taking your family of multiple kids to a game and having fun, and you're like, am I about to spend $1,000? Like, I mean, that's being lenient depending on like where you're setting. Like, and that's the stuff the NBA does have to figure out. There's some in-game presentation stuff that they can fix. But where I disagree with Mark is, I don't think it has to be either or. I mean, he says tanking isn't the issue, the affordability and quality of the game presentation are. I think both can be an issue, because I do think there are a lot of fans that are listening to this that are like, hey, I spend the money to go to games. I spend the money on Mavs TV and to check in for every one of these games. I would love, if I'm going to spend the time, the energy, and the money to follow a team and be a fan of the team, I would love to know that this team is trying to win games, that not, there's not a purposeful thing or agenda out there of like, man, we just want to lose all these games because there's this hope for this draft pick at the end of the year. And so I think tanking is an issue, but I also think it's an issue of like where families, the affordability for families right now. I mean, you look at the Warriors situation, and they've been in this new arena there, the Chase Center, for a while now in San Francisco. But a lot of people compare it to those early days in Oracle and Oakland. And it was like, man, that arena environment was so much fun. It was those up and coming Warriors teams. And that was, I mean, it was just off the charts. They get this new arena. They're really good for years and years and years. And now a lot of those fans are priced out. And now you have all these, so many business people that, you go to a Mavs game right now, and, how many rows do you have to go up from the floor that you're like, hey, do you even care about basketball? Like, or is this just like a business trip with a potential partner that you're just bringing to the game, or you're on a date, or like, and that's the type of stuff that I wish we could figure out at some point. Another thing that he talks about is roster building. So he says this in one of his tweets. He says, the one way to get closer to that is via the draft. He said, trades, cap room, you have a better chance at improving via all three when you tank. When he talks about getting closer, is getting closer to winning a championship, and how when you tank, you achieve all three of those things, or like via all three of those things. He says the second apron / the new NBA has blanked up team building with vets. Let's just say messed up, has messed up team building with vets. In the past, you could have a couple 35% max players, and if one declined for any reason, the tax wasn't onerous, and there were no draft, trade, or apron considerations. It's the only way to really improve your team since you are at or near the second apron is through tanking. He says, which means there is a huge premium on the great players in their rookie deals. And the way to get those great players on the rookie deals is to tank and hope the lottery gods are on your side. So much validity to that. That's something that no one's talking about very much right now. Everybody wants to talk about how to fix tanking, how to fix teams that are just shooting for getting that guy on the next young rookie. It's not just about, hey, well, we want the next young star on our team for the next decade. That's the smartest financial move, because so many teams are so capped on what they can spend, whether depending on what apron there is. Like, those players on these rookie contracts are super valuable. Like, you look at a guy like Cooper Flag, who is making the money that he's making right now, but having the impact that he's having right now. And Mark goes on this whole big thing about why and how rookies are more impactful now than in the past, and how things are different because of college basketball and training stuff and all that. So you get a guy like Cooper on this like super cheap deal because he's a rookie. I mean, that's a gold mine for roster building. Like, Dallas could go out if they wanted to this upcoming summer and say, all right, we have, I mean, heck, they had Anthony Davis. They could afford Anthony Davis and a Kyrie Irving and a Cooper Flag if they wanted to, or like, and that's a big three and no one could do a big three, but the only way you could do a big three is because you have Cooper Flag, that type of player on a rookie contract. So that is a huge part of the tanking thing, that if they fix some of the apron stuff, would that help fix some of the value? I don't know. And I don't know if that's right or not. I'm just, that's what Cuban is saying here.
That's all for today's Big 6 and 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 and 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, and on campus, going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 and 30 NBA, the Big 3 and 30 NFL, or the Big 3 and 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.